Dzień dobry. Dzisiaj w programie Gość PAFERE mam przyjemność rozmawiać z
Hyun Song
from Korea.
I was born in South Korea, but I live in the US now. I basically lived there more than 40 years now. So.
Okay, but you are very concerned about situation in North Korea.
Yes, so I've been working as a North Korea human rights activist for the past 15, 16 years in the US. And so I've been working with North Korean defectors and also working with many human rights organizations and many North Korean defector organizations, both in South Korea and in the US.
There are two very famous books about North Korean defectors. One, Escape from Camp 14. So what was his name of this?
So the main character or person from the book is Hyun Song'iem. He's a good friend of mine.
Yes.
His story was one where he was born in a prison camp and escaped from the prison camp and escaped from North Korea. So his book and his story made great headlines a few years ago when the book came out.
Yeah. And did you meet Naomi Park?
Yumi is a good friend of mine also.
Yeah.
She is now living in the U.S. and I stay in touch with her from time to time. And she's also very well known because of her story and because of her activism, and she's still quite very active in the U.S.
And the famous book "In Order to Live."
Yes,
very. So, advice to our viewers, Polish viewers, to read these books. So, the first one was translated into Polish, and the second one is available only, I think, in English. But English is very simple to understand. There is no sophisticated words, and anybody can read. Can read. Why you became an activist, and why you support northern Korean refugees?
Well, simply put, as somebody of Korean ethnicity, as somebody who was born in Korea but has lived in the U.S., so I would consider myself a Korean American. When I saw the situation in North Korea, I would call them my North Korean brothers and sisters. They are Korean after all. We come from the same Korean blood. There was no North or South Korea, up until the 20th century. And when I saw the starvation and the famine that started in the mid-90s and the suffering that happened from the early 2000s, and that's still continuing right now, and the people leaving or escaping North Korea and what they're going through in China, I felt that, first of all, as somebody who is a Christian and who is a Korean American, I cannot just, sit.
Leave the things like
I just cannot sit and not do anything. So that's why that involved, simply put.
Yeah. And what is your activity?
So activism, by that the very definition of that word, you are active in trying to promote the cause and trying to raise awareness and trying to get people involved. So in the case of North Korean human rights, being in the U.S., there are a lot of things you can do. I live in the metropolitan Washington, D.C. area, so Congress is there. There are a lot of think tanks and NGOs and organizations, so we do a lot of outreaches and meetings and trying to do events and projects with various organizations, events with think tanks. We bring defectors from South Korea, if we live in South Korea, to D.C. to have speaking events. And to engage the politicians, to tell them and to advise them on how to approach the whole North Korean issue, how to get involved with North Korean human rights, and things like that. And working with the defectors, there's so many ways you can help the defectors in South Korea, mostly in South Korea, obviously. In the U.S., there are only about 230 defectors that are resettled. So when you are talking about defectors in South Korea, there are over 33,000 North Korean defectors that are resettled in South Korea. A lot of them are doing well, but many still need help. So whether it's English education, or if they are part of an organization, helping them getting funding for their projects, for example, or in the U.S. Translating documents from English to Korean, or helping them with schools or jobs and things like that. So there are many things that one can do in helping the defectors and being involved with the human rights cause in North Korea.
Yeah, I know that you carried out some direct actions against North Korea. Can you say something about this?
So I'm all about the action and not words, because so many people can just write, and a lot of them do write very well, but sometimes I feel that in addition to writing and speaking, there needs to be action. So for me, my personal goal or action that I want to take is to protest, and to protest not only from the Chinese embassies, because in China, the North Korean refugees are severely targeted and they're repatriated, sent back to North Korea, and the women, North Korean refugee women, are sold in a human trafficking situation. But more importantly, for North Korean embassies, there aren't that many North Korean embassies in the world. But the ones that, the countries that do have the embassies, my plan has been to go there to protest, to hand out leaflets, or to throw leaflets into the compound, and to, not only to agitate the regime, but also to let them know that there are people around the world that are putting the North Korean regime on notice, that what they're doing against their own people, the crimes that they're committing against their people, and the human rights violations they're carrying out, that the world is noticing and the world is knowing about what they're doing, and that we will not stay silent. So, like you said, direct action, taking the fight directly to the North Korean regime is what I'm involved with.
And a couple of years ago, you talked about sending bottles with rice and with messages by using river.
Right.
So North Korea.
Right. So information dissemination. So information is power. Information is having knowledge, and knowledge is power. And one of the biggest reasons why North Korea is such a closed off, such a country that's practically a prison state, is because the Kim family dictatorship, starting from Kim Il-sung down to his son Kim Jong-il, and now the grandson Kim Jong-un, the regime has such a tight grip of information, people accessing outside information, knowing what's going on in the outside world. That's singularly the best and most effective and brutal way that the regime has control over the people. So what many activists, many defectors have done is to send information from the outside into North Korea, whether that's shortwave radio broadcasts, or whether that's leaflets, or the new method is using the ocean to have the currents carry these plastic bottles filled with rice and USBs containing foreign media into North Korea. And so I've been involved with many defector organizations that have been sending rice bottles and leaflets into North Korea. Unfortunately, one of the reasons why I'm in Colombia is to talk about how the South Korean government has put a stop to these type of activities by the defectors. So it's a very serious situation in South Korea, whereby the South Korean government, because they do not want to provoke or to anger the North Korean regime, and because they want to have...
So they start to be afraid of?
Exactly, yeah.
It's incredible.
Yes.
How you perceive the situation? Because everybody knows that it's a prison state, that it's evil, full of evil, and nobody reacts, nobody take any kind of action. I mean, the government of the United States, the government of Russia, government of China, even Chinese and North Korean, it seems to be allies in some extent. Why they do that?
I think it's safe to say, because North Korea is a self-described nuclear state, and the U.S. has begrudgingly admitted that the North Korean regime possesses a nuclear arsenal, and that's why they've been in talks since going back to President Clinton. This is like more than 20 years. And so, people say that, if North Korea was not next to China, and if North Korea was not a nuclear state, it would have been bombed and invaded a long time ago, just like what happened to Iraq or some other countries. And so I think that's obviously the biggest reason why the North Korean government, or the country of North Korea, has not been dealt with like some other countries. But I think because there's the history of the region, the geopolitical history of the region, and the history of North Korea, and the fact that it is a nuclear state, the U.S. and many other countries are dealing with this in a very delicate manner. But in the midst of all this, people tend to forget that it's the people in North Korea that are suffering, that are continuing to suffer, that are continuing to live in hunger and without knowing what's going on in the outside world.
So in 2009, you can correct me if I commit an error, there was a great famine, and they were over the million people died because of hunger?
Right, so the famine started like in the mid-90s, 94, 95, and that was coupled with, being a communist state, mismanagement by the state in terms of, farming and, distribution of, the goods and all that stuff, and typical communist socialist, era, which you probably know very well, and
yeah,
a lot of natural calamities as well. And then that just created the perfect storm of, not enough food being cultivated or farmed, and not enough goods being produced. So people started to death in the mid-90s. It got worse in the late 90s, and then just continued on in the early 2000s. It kind of stabilized, if you will, in the mid-2000s. But right now, even though there's no fear of mass starvation like 10, 15 years ago, there is still big concern of people going hungry in North Korea. And the UN, one of the, I forget the exact body of the UN that did a survey, but the UN, I think it was early this year or late last year, they did say that North Korea will face prospects of hunger among the population. Not starvation, but hunger.
Could you explain also a little bit the situation, now internal situation in North Korea? Because while reading the books of Yeonmi Park or different kind, they risk some kind, the information from outside is leaking to the North Korea. So you can buy DVD, you can buy some pen drive with some messages, you can hear external radio broadcasts and so on. So what is it now?
Right, so because of the activities of many activists and defectors that have sent information into North Korea, and then before COVID, there were people who were able to travel back and forth between North Korea and China. These are merchants and traders and government officials. They were able to go back and forth and then smuggle information and materials and goods in and out of North Korea. So right now, because of COVID, everything's shut down, and there are no North Koreans that are able to travel to China, nor escape from North Korea to China. So there is sort of information black hole. But many organizations, many defectors, they do have contacts within North Korean society, whether it's among the elites or among the general population. So not only is information going into North Korea, but information is coming out of North Korea as well. And in terms of current status in North Korea, the regime says they have no COVID, but obviously everybody knows that that's a lie. So many people are assuming that there is a serious pandemic situation in North Korea as well. It's just that the regime is doing a good job of keeping a lid on the news coming out of North Korea. And then, like you mentioned, USBs, DVDs, micro SD cards. There's a great yearning and hunger for outside information, especially among the youth in North Korea. So a lot of South Korean dramas, a lot of Western movies, South Korean films, those are very popular, and these are circulated among the people. And the method whereby these are circulated is through the markets. There are a lot of these markets that sprang up throughout North Korea where people come to buy goods, but also they trade information, they gossip. The women, they gossip about the latest stuff that's happening. Mm-hmm. And then in the midst of all this is the trade of USBs and micro SD cards that's been circulating not only through the markets, but it spreads throughout the country. And that's how informal information from the outside is distributed, is traded, is shared among the people in North Korea.
I was astonished by the subject of your today's presentation, because you announced that you will talk not only about North Korea, but also some bad things about South Korea. So you claim that there is some erosion of political system in South Korea?
Right, so the current president of South Korea is the Moon Jae-in. He came in with a very populist support among the people, because they were very disappointed with the previous president, who was impeached for various reasons, and that's a whole other subject matter. But he was his background is a human rights lawyer. He fought the military dictatorship of South Korea in the 70s and 80s. But as president, he has been very disappointing, especially when it comes to North Korean policy, because he's what one would call a pro-engagement person, meaning that he looks towards engagement with the North Korean regime in the name of achieving peace and reunification in the Korean Peninsula. But his presidency, when it comes to North Korean policy, has been marked with, I would say, kowtowing and just groveling before Kim Jong-un and the North Korean regime. And the best example is, last year he instituted a ban on the defectors sending information to North Korea. And then the legislation was passed by the National Assembly earlier this year. And so if you don't get permission from the South Korean government and you get caught sending information to North Korea, you are jailed for 3 years and you get fined at $30,000 US. Incredible. And so the very government, the very people that should be supporting these types of activities, they've outlawed it. They banned it. So that's the biggest example of President Moon and his followers following a policy where they are appeasing the North Korean government and not directly attacking the human rights issue of North Korea.
So it's amazing because you said that this law passed by parliament.
Yes.
So democratically elected people just are against human rights.
Unfortunately, the progressive or the liberal party has a supermajority in the National Assembly. So the opposition party, consisting of the conservative party, they're basically powerless to do anything. So that is why next March, and this is getting to the territory of politics in the Korean Peninsula, but next March will be the presidential election in South Korea. And thankfully, in South Korea, the presidential term is only one single 5-year term, so Moon Jae-in can't run again, which is, many people are very happy about that. But what many are worried is that whoever comes after him, if it's another leftist progressive candidate that wins, he or she will be worse than Moon Jae-in, and he or she will finish what Moon started. And so that's why many people feel that next year's presidential election is a life and death situation, not only for South Korea, but for North Korea as well, because if this sort of policy continues, the regime continues to remain stabilized, the regime continues to exist, but the people continue to suffer.
Incredible. So, as my last question, it's some kind of help. How an ordinary Pole who lives in Poland, thousands of kilometers from North Korea, can help North Koreans?
Well, very good question. I don't know if many Poles are aware of this, but I believe in the 50s or 60s, many North Korean children were sent to Poland.
Yes.
And they were, taken care of by many Polish families, and then they were abruptly taken back to North Korea. So there have been many documentaries and stories and articles about the situation. So starting off on that historical event, I think many Poles and the older generation, they know what it's like to have lived under communism.
Yeah.
And
so we lived in a very it wasn't the same,
right?
So the principles were the same, but the situation were far better. So yes,
obviously the communist days of Poland is nothing like the communist situation in North Korea, obviously. But I think whether it's Poland or any other former Eastern Bloc countries, or even the U.S. or South Korea, I think the younger generation, they do not fully realize how lucky they are to be living in a free, democratic, capitalist, non-socialist, non-communist country. So I think for any Polish citizen watching this video, especially if you're a young person in college, graduate school, I think the best thing to do is just get involved. And how do you get involved? Well, you can get involved by supporting groups that are in South Korea or in the US, whether it's donating funds, or whether it's starting a club on your campus, or inviting a defector to Poland to speak, and to tell them about what's going on right now in the 21st century, 2021.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
Then, obviously, because of COVID, there's no travel and stuff. But plenty of webinar events can be done. And when travel restrictions are lifted, I think it would be great for North Korean defectors to visit Poland. To my knowledge, I think there have been conferences in the past where they talked about North Korean human rights. But I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think any defectors have visited Poland, in my knowledge, to speak about North Korean human rights. So I think it would be great through Jan to invite defectors to speak in Poland and raise awareness about what's going on in North Korea. And I know that Poland is a majority Catholic nation. I don't know if that still holds true, but if you're Catholic, and I say this as somebody who has a religious background myself, but pray for North Korea. And one of the things that many people don't realize is that when the Berlin Wall fell and East Germany, West Germany were reunited, it's common knowledge now that many Christians in East Germany, they pray for unification to happen. And so if you are a Catholic and if you believe in justice and human rights and God, pray for the unification of North and South Korea. And furthermore, I would say that if you, again, and this is referring to going back to the younger generation, if you can speak English, go to South Korea when you are able to travel, and volunteer, intern at an organization in South Korea where you can use your English skills, where you can use your, even Polish skills, whatever skills you have to get involved with the defectors, to help defector organizations, and that's a great opportunity.
An ordinary Pole can just call some kind of organization in South Korea, go there and devote his, let's say, 4 weeks or 8 weeks working for them.
Yes, so I know a very good dear friend of mine. She's a Bulgarian, and she actually she studied and lived in South Korea for many years, and she actually worked at a very well-known South Korean NGO that was involved in human rights. I know there's another well, there are a lot of many Americans and Canadians, but yeah, if you speak English, you know, these organizations are willing to work with you, hire you as an intern, and obviously there are logistics of, you know, going to Korea, you know, all that stuff. But
yeah, but you know, there are some people who will volunteer. I am pretty sure that it will happen. You know, we help people in Zambia, in Argentina.
Yes.
So Korea, I would like, you know, I ask myself and think, okay, I can go to Korea. You know, 1 month it's okay.
Yes.
I can pay. I can
Absolutely.
afford this because I will do something very, very important, I think.
yeah, so if you are, you know, studying, you know, the international relations or history or that type of work that gets that has you involved with the international relations or history or politics, I think it would be a good opportunity to get involved with this. And I think, and I guess in closing down this the interview, I think, you know, people are not involved because they don't know, and they don't want to know because they either don't care or they don't want to care. So I think once you start caring about this issue, it's very important to get involved because you, once you know about what's going on in North Korea, you can't just sit still and not do anything. So I really hope that Jan, you and I, we can work together to raise up, you know, a whole bunch of people in Poland to get
Yeah, I think, you know, it's I have now an idea that if you go to Korea, volunteer to help this organization, you'll fight for rights of the prisoners who were it was unjust to imprison them. Okay, so this is a big job. Thank you very much for this talk.